Hello everyone, this is Rafe. For those who don't know, I work at the Boys and Girls Club of Bay Mills and Brimley. Last summer when I was there, we started a music program. It was kind of a freelance music program, and we had an electronic drum set, and we also had a few guitars for club members to learn some music on. We made a lot of noise and had a lot of fun. That was the main goal. But I wanted to make some videos more towards drumming. The first thing I want to do is I just want to explain to everyone the terminology of the drum set. I will do some videos where I'm actually going to teach you how to play. I'm going to use my electronic drum set for that because I feel it'll be much better with the audio and whatnot. But it's easier to grasp what the actual pieces are called with an acoustic set, a normal drum set like this. So let's get started. Now first, the part that we sit on, you can probably figure that out. It's called a stool, or you can call it a throne. So the main two drums that you're going to play the most is your bass drum, which is your biggest drum, and the bigger the drum, the deeper the drum, the deeper the tone, the sound. So that's your boom. Now, there's a pedal you play with your foot, and obviously it's called a bass drum pedal or a kick drum. A lot of times there'll be two different words, maybe even three, that are used to name a piece, but you can call it a kick drum, a bass drum, you got kick drum pedal, bass drum pedal. The next drum that you're going to use the most is your snare drum. And your snare drum is kind of the polar opposite of your bass drum. It's going to be your highest pitched drum. And it's basically, I explain it as, it's the tat. This is the boom, the snare is the tat. And that's the backbone of pretty much every song. The beat is gonna be laid down with your bass drum and your snare. Now the other drums are called toms. Toms for short. When they're up here, this is mounted to my bass drum. Some people call them rack toms or tom-toms. When it's down here, this one will be called a floor tom. Generally the ones down here have their own legs and they're sitting on the floor. Hence floor tom. I actually have this one on a stand. You can't really see it, but it would be considered a floating tom. But if someone came in and said, hey, what size is that floor tom? I wouldn't say, well, technically it's a floating tom. It's a floor tom. It's over in this general area. I know what he's talking about. And the reason you need to know terminology with anything, not just in music, is that when you're trying to learn, you have to know what they're talking about. You have to know what they're telling you to hit. So these would be the toms. Now your toms are generally, you could have, this is a basic set. This set would be described as a 4-piece drum set because I have 4 drums. I have my bass, my snare, my 2 toms. Now you could have tons of toms, double bass. Sometimes people might have another snare that sounds a little different. This is your basic 4-piece. Now you might say, well, I see other things. I see these cymbals. So there's actually 7 pieces. For whatever reason, when you're describing a drum set, you don't throw in the cymbals. You just say it's a 4-piece. If it has 10 cymbals, 3 cymbals, those don't count when you're describing the size of the drum set. So what we had is a basic 4-piece drum set, and you can pretty much play just about any song with this drum set right here. You might not be able to do it perfect note for note, but that's not what it's about anyway. So we'll move on. We know what the drums are now. We're going to move on to the cymbals, and that's just your basic must kind of have cymbals. The main cymbal that you are probably going to hit the most, this is probably the piece that you are going to whack the most, is called your hi-hat. Now your hi-hat is actually 2 cymbals. One is kind of upside down, and the hi-hat stand that they're on is made so you can open and close those 2 cymbals. So you can actually just play them with your foot. Much like the bass drum pedal, you have another pedal. I don't think you guys can see the pedal down there, but, and how this works is, the bottom cymbal slides down onto the stand, and then the top cymbal screws in to this piece, and that slides over the rod on your hi-hat stand. And then you simply push down on your pedal and tighten this wing nut until you get the desired space. And that's all personal preference on how much you like. Another thing that allows you to do is it allows you to get more sounds out of your hi-hat. If you hold it close, you're going to get a tight, quiet sound. If you hold it loose, it'll ring out. But you can also go back and forth. You can. So that's what that allows. That hi-hat stand allows you to get different sounds and textures and tones for different styles of music, or even just in different parts of songs. You might have a song that, you know, during the verse it's tight and quiet, but then when it gets to the chorus where it opens up and this, you know, the song gets bigger, so to speak. The other symbol next to it here is a crash. Now this would be it's kind of I kind of consider the crash symbol, it's the exclamation point of the drum set. It's the when you get to when there's powerful spots in the song, that's where you'll hear a crash. And a lot of times, almost all the time, the crash is accompanied with the bass drum. So pretty much anytime you hit that crash, you're going to be hitting it with your bass drum. Now sometimes it comes with the snare, but it's pretty rare that it's ever just hit open without another, when I say open, which is without another drum accompanying it. Now it does, sometimes it's used like that. You might hear that at the end of songs or beginning of songs, you wouldn't have the bass drum with it. But generally, when you hear it, it's going to be with the bass drum. This big cymbal over here, and generally it's going to be your largest cymbal, is called a ride cymbal. It's a lot like the hi-hat in the aspect that you're going to play this cymbal a lot. You're probably going to, this is going to be your second most played cymbal. And it's used much like the hi-hat is used. It's, to me, I generally describe it as it's prettier than the hi-hat. It's used in more slower parts of songs, not really slower parts, but mellower parts of songs. Generally, like a lot of rock songs, the verse will be with the hi-hat, and then the chorus will be on the ride. The ride allows for a couple different sounds just because of its size. It can be played out here, and it's kind of rings out, and you know, it's nice, pretty sound. Or you can play it up on the bell, and you get a much sharper ring that really cuts through everything. You can play it near the bell; it's a little different than the edge. If you play it with the tip of your stick, you'll get a different sound than with the thicker part of the stick. If you listen, that's with the tip, and then now with the thicker part, it sounds more solid. It sounds like you're really hitting it with something big. So that pretty much sums up your basic 4-piece drum set. But really, with these 4 pieces, you can play just about any rock song. The only other another thing I want to show you is, this is a must-have. This is called a drum key, and what this does on all these drums, this is how you tune them. There's that key fits on that. It's called a tension rod, and that's what you do to determine how tight you want your skins, your drum heads. Another thing, you can have 2 different words. People call them skins, people call them heads. Heads is probably more common. And generally how you tune your drums is you want the smaller toms, just in nature, are going to have a higher tone. And as you go generally from, if you're right-handed, from left to right, depending on, it doesn't matter how many toms you have, they'll go from a higher tone to a lower tone. So that's, with this 2 toms, you can hear the floor toms deeper. And like I said, the snare is basically your highest pitch. Another thing you might notice that the snare kind of just sounds totally different. And the reason for that is the bottom of your snare drum, if you can see that, it's called a strainer. And it's metal strainers that go across the bottom of the drum to create that tat. That's what creates that. Now you have a switch over here, throw off, and you can do that, and then it'll loosen the strainers. And then when you play it, it won't have that tat. So that gives you 2 different sounds out of your snare drum. Mostly it's played with the snares on, but sometimes Van Halen, if you know some classic rock, is one drummer that played a lot of his stuff with his snares off, and it gave him a unique sound. You don't have to play any different than anybody else, but you have a little different sound than everyone. And this is adjustable too. Some people have it tighter or looser for style of music or personal taste. I generally keep mine pretty tight. I like my snare drum to. I'm a rock guy, and I like it to be. I like it to be tight and cut through everything else. So a lot of that is personal preference. That about sums it up. So we're gonna go through it: bass, snare, tom, floor tom, then your cymbals, hi-hat, crash, and ride. So those are the names of the 4-piece drum set. And the reason I want to do this first again is that when we start learning how to play some beats and stuff, it'll be a lot easier and you'll understand and you'll pick it up quicker if I say, okay, now you play this part on your floor tom, or you need to switch over to the ride here, and you'll know which part which piece I'm talking about. All right, guys, that sums it up for my first drum video for Boys and Girls Club. I hope you enjoyed. And another thing I want to add, one last thing, is when we get playing, you don't have to have a drum set to learn how to play drums. I learned how to play with 2 wooden spoons and some pillows, and it's basically just about teaching your limbs, your appendages, what's called 4-way independence. One being able to do this while one is doing this and the other one's doing that. And it doesn't matter if you're hitting a drum, you're hitting a book, or you're hitting the pots and pans. That doesn't matter. I basically learned how to play drums before I ever sat behind a drum set. I didn't get good. I'm still not great, but it can be done. And it's a lot of drummers have done that. A lot of people started out with makeshift stuff and pillows, and so don't think that you have to have a drum set to learn this stuff. It's more about just learning where and how to hit, not what you're actually hitting for now. All right, thanks guys, and we'll see you soon.